The aftermath of what human historians would later call the Great Sniveling marked the beginning of an unprecedented crisis for the Intergalactic. Council, their ultimate weapon, the World Ender, sat powerless in space, while its crew recovered from what Earth doctors had cheerfully diagnosed as mild respiratory and digestive discomfort. Council leader Vexeri found himself in the impossible position of explaining to the galactic community how humanity had defeated their most powerful weapon. Using what amounted to germs, the crystalline being's form flickered with embarrassment as he addressed an emergency council session that humans have demonstrated capabilities that fall outside all known parameters of warfare, he announced reluctantly. They appear to weaponize concepts that civilized species do not even consider threats in. The Council's medical bay Admiral Zefdar was being treated for what human doctors had helpfully labeled alien flu syndrome. Between bouts of sneezing and digestive distress, he managed to address the War Council via hologram. Honorable. They engineer bizarre scenarios that make traditional military response impossible. On Earth, President Kim Jong-ho was dealing with his own unprecedented situation. Humanity had apparently won a war against a galactic superpower using mining equipment, space, debris, and biological samples. The victory was so absurd that even the human military was not sure how to process it. Madam Secretary, President Kim addressed his defense minister. What exactly is our current military status? Defense Minister Lim Chan-wook consulted her reports with visible confusion. Mr. President, according to our intelligence, the Council's entire fleet is currently sick. Their planet-killing weapon is offline because the maintenance crew cannot stop sneezing long enough to operate the controls. Dr. Kim Soo-jin, now being called humanity's most effective military strategist, looked embarrassed by the attention. Mr. President, I want to emphasize that the biological agent was designed to be completely harmless. It is essentially a very aggressive version of the common cold. Combined with mild food poisoning, Dr. Kim, President Kim, replied, "You have accomplished something no military force in galactic history has managed. You have made an entire alien armada call." In sick, the breakthrough in negotiations came from an unexpected source. Ambassador Kang Dae-ho received a personal communication from Council leader Vexeri, transmitted on a diplomatic frequency that had not been used in over 1,000 years. Human Ambassador Vexeri translated voice carried a tone of exhausted resignation. The Council requests formal diplomatic discussions. We do not know how to fight. Ambassador Kang, sitting in his sole office, nearly dropped his coffee. Council leader, are you requesting peace negotiations? We are requesting instruction. Vexeri replied with what sounded like desperation. In 3 millennia of galactic dominance, we have never encountered a species that responds to overwhelming force with creative chaos. You defeat our technology with mining equipment, neutralize our weapons with space debris, and disable our ultimate weapon with biological samples that you consider mild discomfort. Well, Ambassador Kang replied thoughtfully, when you put it that way, I suppose we are rather difficult to conquer conventionally. Formal peace negotiations took place aboard a neutral space station in the asteroid belt, appropriately chosen since it had been the site of humanity's most creative military victory. The human delegation included Ambassador Kang, General Park Yan-suk, and Dr. Kim Soo-jin, whose reputation as the flu warrior had made her famous throughout the galaxy. The Council delegation was led by Vexeri himself, along with Admiral Zefdar, still occasionally sneezing, and war strategist Kolvex, who had requested to meet the species that had redefined his understanding of conflict. Human representatives, Vexeri began formally. The Council has never before encountered a species with your unique approach to resistance. We wish to understand, how did you develop such unconventional military capabilities? General Park exchanged glances with her colleagues before answering. Council leader, I think there has been a fundamental misunderstanding. We do not have unconventional military capabilities. We are not even particularly good at warfare, but you defeated our fleets using impossible tactics. Kolvek's translation device conveyed his confusion. That is just it, Dr. Kim Soo-jin interrupted. We do not think of them as military tactics. We think of them as problem solving. When you threatened us, we treated it like any other engineering challenge. Ambassador Kang nodded. You see, humans have spent our entire history dealing with problems that seemed impossible to solve. Natural disasters, resource shortages, hostile environments. We have learned to look at any challenge and ask, what can we use that we are not supposed to use your mining equipment? Admiral Zefdar said wonderingly, your civilian ships, your biological samples, you were not using military resources. At all exactly, General Park confirmed, we were using human resources. Everything we have becomes a potential tool when we need it badly enough. Council delegations sat in stunned silence as they processed this information for 3,000 years. They had assumed that military capability required military thinking and military equipment. The idea that a species could treat warfare as a civilian engineering problem was completely outside. Their understanding Vexeri crystal form pulsed with what might have been confusion, so when we threatened you with our fleets, you responded by converting your entire civilization into an improvised weapon system. Pretty much, General Park confirmed, we figured that if you wanted to fight us, you would have to fight all of us, and that includes our miners, our farmers, our scientists, and even our sick people. Apparently, Dar Kim added, we should probably mention that what we used against your world ender was actually a very mild illness by human standards. Most of our people go to work with symptoms like that. We have much worse diseases if you really want to escalate things. The council representatives looked at each other with growing alarm. The humans were casually mentioning that they had worse biological weapons available while treating the destruction of the council's ultimate weapon as a minor inconvenience. War strategist Kolvex leaned forward. Are you saying that your entire species is capable of improvised warfare using any available resources? Ambassador Kong shrugged. More or less, we call it making do. It's a basic human survival skill, and you teach this to your children, Vextheri. General Park smiled. We call it education, problem solving, creativity, resource management. Yes, we teach our children to think this way from a very early age. The council delegation realized they were not negotiating with a military power. They were negotiating with an entire civilization that had evolved to treat every challenge as a problem to be solved using whatever tools were available. The humans had not developed superior weapons or tactics. They had developed superior thinking. Vextheri finally understood why every council strategy had failed. The humans were not playing by military rules because they were not thinking in military terms. They were thinking like engineers and scientists and problem solvers who happened to be facing a very large problem. Human representatives, the council leader said slowly, we believe we have been approaching this conflict incorrectly. We assumed you were a military threat when you are actually something much more dangerous. So, no, Ambassador Kong replied cheerfully. We are definitely a military threat too. We just do military things differently than you expected. Negotiations continued for several more hours, but the fundamental agreement was already clear. The council would stop trying to conquer humanity, and humanity would stop embarrassing the council with impossible military victories. As the meeting concluded, Admiral Zefdar had one final question. Ambassador Kong, in your species' history, has any conflict ever ended with both sides simply agreeing to leave each other alone? Ambassador Kong smiled. Council leader, that is how most of our conflicts end eventually. We fight until everyone gets tired of fighting, then we sit down and work out a way to live together. And this works. Vexeri asked Tujli. Kong replied, though I should warn you, we are probably going to be the most annoying allies you have ever had. We have a tendency to question everything and suggest improvements to systems that have worked perfectly well for thousands of years. Vexeri form flickered with what might have been amusement given your species' talent for creative chaos. Ambassador, I suspect the galaxy is about to become a much more interesting place. After the asteroid belt embarrassment, the Intergalactic Council faced something they had never experienced in 3,000 years of galactic dominance. A complete military failure against what should have been easy targets. The humans had turned space rocks into weapons and made the Council's most powerful fleet look like confused children. Council leader Vexeri crystalline form flickered with unstable energy as he addressed the emergency assembly. The human situation has escalated beyond all acceptable parameters. They have demonstrated a complete inability to understand civilized warfare. War strategists Kolvex, an ancient being whose species had conquered 17 star systems, studied the tactical reports with growing confusion. Council leader, I have analyzed every human military action. Their tactics appear to be based on a philosophy of creative desperation. They assume they cannot win through normal methods, so they do not attempt normal warfare. That is impossible, declared Admiral Rethgone, commander of the Third Fleet. All warfare follows basic principles: superior numbers, advanced technology, strategic positioning. These are universal laws. Vex manipulated the holographic display showing battle data from Luna Base, and the asteroid belt admiral observed their pattern at Luna Base. They used an industrial reactor as a weapon of mass disruption. In the asteroid belt, they weaponized an entire region of space. They do not fight battles, they engineer disaster. Earth, the human military leadership, was dealing with their own strategic problems. In the newly built Xenological Warfare Division, General Park Yanzug addressed her staff with grim news. Intelligence reports suggest the Council is preparing something they call a total pacification protocol. She announced, "We believe this involves the complete sterilization of Earth's biosphere." Colonel Lee Jae-soon, recently promoted after the asteroid belt victory, reviewed incoming data. General, our deep space monitoring stations detect massive energy signatures gathering beyond the outer planets. Whatever they are planning, it is much bigger than anything we have seen before. Darcho Minjae, Earth's leading expert on Council technology, projected his analysis onto the main screen based on the energy readings. "I believe they are building some kind of planet-killing weapon. The power requirements suggest they can literally crack a world in half, so they are moving from conquest to genocide." General Park observed grimly, "They have decided we are too much trouble to rule, so they are going to eliminate us completely." There is more, Dr. Cho continued. "The weapon appears to require several days of charging time. During that period, it will be stationary and vulnerable to attack." Colonel Lee studied the tactical situation. "General, even if we could reach their weapon, we do not have anything capable of damaging something that powerful. Our entire space fleet consists of converted civilian vessels and mining equipment. Then we will have to get creative." General Park replied, "What do we have that the Council does not expect us to use?" The answer came from an unexpected source, Dr. Kim Soo-jin, a marine biologist who had been studying Council species physiology. Raised her hand hesitantly. "General, I have been analyzing the Council species biology and I noticed something interesting. None of them evolved in environments with significant biological diversity. Their immune systems appear to be highly specialized but extremely limited." Meaning what exactly? General Park aced. "Meaning they might be vulnerable to Earth pathogens they have never encountered," Dr. Kim explained. "Not to kill them, but to make them extremely uncomfortable." Colonel Lee's eyes lit up with understanding. "You are suggesting biological warfare?" "Not warfare," Dr. Kim corrected, "more like biological pranking on a galactic scale." 3 days later, the Council's ultimate weapon, called the World Ender, powered up in the outer solar system. The moon-sized device began drawing energy from nearby stars, preparing to deliver a blast capable of shattering planets. Council leader Vexteri observed the charging sequence with satisfaction. "Finally, we will end this ridiculous conflict," he announced. "The humans will learn that some species are too dangerous to be allowed to exist." That was when the first human infiltration team arrived. Captain Yu Minho had volunteered to lead what everyone knew was a suicide mission aboard a single, modified cargo vessel. His ship, the Ancient Wanderer, approached the World Ender while broadcasting standard mining survey codes. The Council fleet, focused on protecting against military assault, barely noticed one more civilian craft. "This is you to Earth Control," he transmitted on an encrypted channel. "Package delivery in progress." The package was Dr. Kim Soo-jin biological experiment. Not a weapon designed to kill, but a carefully engineered collection of Earth bacteria designed to cause maximum discomfort. To alien immune systems, the organisms would create symptoms similar to the worst flu in galactic history, combined with digestive and respiratory problems. As the Ancient Wanderer cargo bay opened and released its microscopic payload into the world Ender atmospheric systems. "Captain, you could not help but smile." "Council fleet, this is Captain Yu of the Earth cargo vessel Ancient Wanderer. I have a message from humanity." "What? Is it human?" came the irritated reply from the Council flagship. "We would like to introduce you to Earth's immune system," you replied cheerfully. "We think you are going to find it very educational." Within hours, the massive World Ender facility was filled with alien personnel suffering from the worst biological discomfort they had ever experienced. The weapons charging sequence ground to a halt, as technical crews were too sick to maintain the complex systems. Council leader Vexteri found himself experiencing something his species had never felt before. He was sneezing Uncontrollably, while his digestive system rebelled against his last meal, the crystalline being had never imagined that his body could feel so miserable. Medical officer report to the command center. He ordered between violent sneezes. The medical officer, a floating jellyfish-like creature, arrived, looking equally distressed. Council leader, I have never seen anything like this. The entire crew is experiencing severe biological dysfunction. Our immune systems appear to be completely overwhelmed by what Vex theory demanded by what the humans call the common cold, combined with something they term food poisoning, the medical officer replied. The biological agents are completely harmless, but extremely uncomfortable. We estimate full recovery will take several days. Everald Zeftar, still recovering from his earlier encounters with humans, managed to contact the command center via hologram. Between bouts of what humans would recognize as stomach flu, council leader, he wheezed, I recommend immediate ceasefire negotiations. These humans do not fight wars. They engineer impossible situations that make normal military response useless. Meanwhile, on the World Ender maintenance crews tried desperately to continue the weapons charging sequence while dealing with symptoms that made concentration impossible. The device, which required precise calibration and constant monitoring, began developing system errors as sick technicians made mistakes. Chief Engineer Mortec A, insectoid being with 6 arms, found that even his species' legendary efficiency was useless when he could not stop what humans called sniveling. Every few seconds his breathing passages would produce an irritating sound that broke his concentration. This is impossible, he transmitted. To the command center, the biological agents are affecting our cognitive functions. I cannot maintain proper system calibration while experiencing these symptoms. General Mordock, who was commanding the Fleet Protection Forces, discovered that military discipline meant nothing when faced with what felt like the worst hangover in galactic history. His tactical displays kept blurring as his eyes watered uncontrollably. The humans have weaponized discomfort, he reported to anyone who would listen. They have turned biological inconvenience into a military strategy. Captain, you watched from a safe distance as the mighty World Ender began showing signs of system failure. The charging sequence, which should have taken 3 days, was now completely disrupted as sick alien crews struggled to perform basic maintenance. Earth control, this is you, he reported. Mission accomplished. The Council ultimate weapon has been defeated by germs. They are too sick to operate their planet killer. The response from Earth was filled with amazement. Captain, that might be the most ridiculous military victory in human history. You grinned as he watched alien ships trying to dock with the World Ender, while their pilots sneezed and struggled with nausea. Just wait until the Council realizes that we consider this a mild illness. Most humans go to work with symptoms like this for the first time in galactic history. A planet-killing weapon had been neutralized by what Earth doctors classified as minor cold and flu symptoms. The mighty Intergalactic Council found themselves defeated not by superior firepower, but by microscopic organisms that humans barely considered worth mentioning. War was far from over, but the humans had proven once again that they approached conflict in ways that no one else in the galaxy could understand or counter. 2 weeks after the Luna-based disaster, the Intergalactic Council met in emergency session for the first time in 50 years. The impossible had happened. A primitive species had not only refused to surrender, but had actually defeated a council fleet using mining equipment and passenger ships. Even worse, they had released their prisoners with a message that was almost insulting. Council leader Vextheri crystal body pulsed with angry red light as he spoke to the thousands of alien representatives. The human problem has grown beyond acceptable limits. They have shown a complete inability to understand civilized warfare. Admiral Zeftar, still bandaged from his wounds, stood before the council to give his report. Honored counselors, I must stress that these humans do not follow any known military rules. They use civilian ships as warships, industrial tools as weapons, and they seem genuinely confused by the idea of surrender. Counselor, their crone tentacles twisted with agitation. Surely this must be an act. No species can be that backwards. I studied the battle recordings myself, Zeftar replied. During our fight, their fleet commander actually stopped the battle to look up what he called regulations about treating prisoners. They had to research the proper way to accept a surrender. The chamber filled with confused noise. War Council General Mordock, a veteran of hundreds of battles, demanded silence. This is strategically impossible. How does a species develop space travel without learning basic military science and Earth human? Leaders were asking similar questions about their enemies. President Kim Jong-ho called an emergency meeting in Seoul government building to discuss what everyone was now calling the alien war. "And gentlemen," he announced to the group, "we appear to be fighting aliens who expect us to lose politely." Defense Minister Lim Chan-wook spread out pictures and data on the conference table. "Our intelligence shows the Council has never faced real resistance. Their entire military system assumes quick surrender after they show overwhelming force." Der Chen Haewon, Earth's expert on alien psychology, reviewed her analysis of captured Council communications. "Mr. President, I believe we are dealing with a civilization that has eliminated warfare as we understand it. They have become so good at conquest that they have forgotten how to fight actual battles." Explaining, President Kim requested, "Think about it," Dr. Chen continued, "for thousands of years, every species they met immediately gave up. When threatened, they developed a culture where military action means showing up and accepting submission. They have never had to change their tactics, develop new strategies, or deal with enemies who fight." Back Admiral Song Tae-hoon, newly appointed as Earth's Space Defense Commander, leaned forward. "So you are saying they are the galaxy's biggest bullies, but they have never been in a real fight?" "Exactly," Dr. Chen confirmed, "and now they face humans who have spent our entire history fighting each other and learning from every war." The Council was preparing what they believed would be their final answer to the human problem. General Mordok had gathered a massive fleet of 500 warships, representing the combined military might of 12 different alien species. No force in galactic history had ever survived such overwhelming power. The human response was typically unexpected when long-range sensors detected the approaching Armada. Earth government issued a public statement that was broadcast throughout the solar system and sent directly to the Council fleet. Ambassador Kang Daeho voice carried across space with calm determination to the approaching Council forces. "This is Earth's final diplomatic message. We have prepared a demonstration of human military philosophy. We hope you will find it educationally." General Mordok received the message aboard his flagship with contempt. "Educational? What can these primitives possibly teach us about warfare?" The question was answered when the Council fleet reached the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. What they found there challenged every principle of military science they had ever learned. The humans had turned the entire asteroid belt into a weapon mining. Stations throughout the belt began launching asteroids at incredible speeds, using mass drivers that had been secretly installed over the past 2 weeks, but these were not random attacks. The asteroids had been carved and shaped into precise projectiles, guided by navigation systems taken from old satellites. "Incoming projectiles detected," Mordok's sensor officer reported. "Thousands of them approaching from all directions. Impossible." The general replied, "Asteroids do not move that fast, and they do not change course mid-flight." Engineer Nam Ji-hoon, working from Mining Station Series Alpha, coordinated the unprecedented attack. "All stations, this is Nam. Remember, we are not trying to destroy their fleet. We are trying to teach them about fighting humans. Modified asteroids were not designed to hit the Council ships directly. Instead, they exploded around the fleet in carefully planned patterns, creating debris fields that broke up their formations and forced the alien vessels into defensive moves. They had never practiced." General Mordok found his massive armada scattered and confused, trying to fly through a 3-dimensional maze of high-speed debris while civilian mining stations continued launching new obstacles faster than his weapons could clear them. "This is not warfare," he transmitted to his fleet commanders. "This is chaos." From Series Alpha, Engineer Nam replied cheerfully, "Now you are starting to understand human military thinking. General, welcome to our universe where nothing makes sense and everyone makes it up." As the Gotha Council fleet, that had conquered dozens of star systems, found itself completely helpless against an enemy that had weaponized an entire region of space, using equipment designed to mine rocks. The sophisticated alien warships with their advanced targeting systems and energy shields were useless against simple chunks of metal flying at impossible speeds. Admiral Rethgon, commanding the Third Fleet, tried to establish some kind of order. "General, we need to retreat and reassess. This battlefield makes no tactical sense." General Mordok, pride wounded by the suggestion that his mighty fleet should run away from mining equipment, refused to consider withdrawal. "Against civilian installations, we cannot be defeated by rock throwers." But that was exactly what was happening. The human mining stations continued their relentless bombardment, turning the space around the Council fleet into an ever-changing obstacle. Of course, the aliens found themselves dodging debris, moving in patterns that no computer could predict because the humans were making up new tactics every few minutes. Captain Lee Hyansu, commanding the mining station Vesta Prime, came up with a new strategy. He began launching asteroids in spiral patterns that created whirlpools of debris, forcing the Council ships to fly in circle station. Commander Park Sang-woo from the Palace facility started timing his launches to create walls of moving rock that herded the alien ships into smaller and smaller areas, like a cosmic cattle drive. The Council fleet, which had expected to demonstrate their superiority through overwhelming firepower, found themselves trapped in a maze created by humans, who treated warfare like a giant engineering puzzle. General Mordok watched his tactical displays with growing disbelief as his formations continued to break apart. Every time his ships tried to group together for a coordinated attack, another wave of modified asteroids would force them to scatter human mining stations. He transmitted, "This is General Mordok of the Council fleet. I demand you cease this chaotic assault and face us in proper battle." Formation Engineer Nam voice came back filled with amusement. "General, we are facing you in proper battle formation. This is how humans fight. We use whatever works, and we make up the rest as we go." The situation became even more impossible when the human stations began coordinating their attacks in real time, creating patterns of debris that seemed to anticipate the Council fleet's movements. The aliens found themselves constantly reacting to threats they could not predict or counter. "How are they doing this, Admiral Rethgon?" demanded they. "Are using mining equipment and space rocks, but they are outmaneuvering our entire fleet." General Mordok studied the tactical data with growing understanding. "These humans do not fight like a military force, they fight like an engineering team solving a problem in real time. They are treating our entire fleet as a technical challenge." After 6 hours of being herded, pushed, scattered, and generally embarrassed by mining equipment, the mighty Council fleet finally admitted defeat. General Mordok sent a message that no Council commander had ever transmitted before. "Human stations, this is General Mordok. We request permission to withdraw from this engagement." Engineer Nam replied with barely contained laughter, "Permission granted, General, but remember to tell your Council that this was just a small demonstration. We have much bigger rocks if you want to try this at Nas." The Council fleet limped away from the asteroid belt. General Mordok tried to understand what had happened. His sophisticated military force had been defeated not by superior weapons or tactics, but by humans who had treated the entire battle like a very large construction project. The worst part was that the humans seemed to think it had been fun. 3 days after the strange meeting with the Council, the aliens decided to teach humanity a lesson. They would show these stubborn humans what happened when someone refused to obey the Council rules. A small fleet of 12 warships, each one powerful enough to destroy an entire city, was sent to Earth's moon. The target was Luna Base, a small research station where only 37 humans lived and worked. The Council believed this would be a quick and easy demonstration. Base kill everyone inside, and then Earth would understand that resistance was pointless. Captain Park Jinwoo was on Luna Base when the enemy ships appeared on the horizon like dark shadows moving across the gray moon surface. The base was not built for war. It was a place where scientists studied space and conducted experiments. The only weapons they had were designed to shoot down dangerous asteroids, not fight alien warships. Dr. Lee So-young was in the main laboratory working on her research. When the alarm bells started ringing, she looked up from her computer screen and saw the other scientists running around in panic. Through the big windows that faced space, she could see the Council ships getting closer. Sergeant Choi Jae-min was the head of security for Luna Base, but his job was usually just making sure people followed safety rules and checking that doors were locked properly. He had never expected to defend against an alien invasion. With only 6 security guards and some emergency equipment, the communication system crackled to life with a message in perfect Korean. Council fleet requesting immediate surrender of all personnel. You have 5 minutes to evacuate, or we will begin destroying your facility. Nam Hyojin, the communications officer, looked at Captain Park with worry in her eyes. Sir, we do not have any weapons that can hurt those ships. Our defense systems are made for protecting against space rocks, not military attacks. Captain Park studied the enemy formation through the observation deck windows. He counted their ships and tried to figure out what weapons they carried. The aliens had positioned themselves in a perfect attack pattern that would let them destroy Luna Base from multiple angles. Send them a message. Park ordered. Tell them we need 10 minutes to discuss their offers. Nam looked confused. We cannot fight those ships even with 10 hours, let alone 10 minutes. What are we going to do? Park smiled, but it was not a happy smile. We are going to do what humans always do when faced with impossible situations. We are going to improvise and make them regret underestimating Ustiar Lee. Rushed over from her laboratory. Captain, I need 8 more minutes to back up all my research. Data to the quantum drives. If we lose this information, it will set Earth science back by years. Perfect, Park replied. That gives us just enough time, Sergeant Choi. How much explosive material do we have in storage? Choi checked his security tablet. We have mining charges for asteroid work and some emergency breach seals, but nothing that could damage military ships. Sir, what exactly are you planning? Park pointed at the station's fusion reactor, which powered all of Luna Base. Dr. Lee, your team discovered that our reactor can be overloaded in a controlled way, right? The one that creates a massive electromagnetic pulse. Lee nodded slowly. Yes, but that would destroy the entire base and probably kill us all. The energy release would be enormous. Exactly. Park said that pulse would disable their electronics for several minutes, maybe long enough for some of us to escape in the emergency pods. The Council Fleet Commander, Admiral Zeftar, watched the human base through his ship's sensors. His species, the Valkyrie, had conquered 47 worlds using this same simple tactic. Show overwhelming force, demand surrender, and then destroy anyone who refused it. Always worked, Admiral, his tactical officer reported. The humans are requesting additional time. They claim they are having technical problems with their evacuation. System Sheftar clicked his mandibles with impatience. Granted, but we will wait no longer than the time we promised on. Luna Base. The human crew worked frantically to prepare Captain Park's desperate plan. Dr. Lee and her scientists modified the fusion reactor, while the security team gathered everyone into the most protected area of the station. Data backup completely announced. Reactor overload sequence ready for activation. On your command, Captain Park opened a communication channel to the Council fleet. This is Captain Park of Luna Base. We have finished our discussions, and I am afraid we must decline your generous offer. Response from Admiral Zeftar was filled with confusion. Decline? You cannot decline an ultimatum. This makes no sense. Watch us, Park replied with a cheerful tone that made several of his crew members smile, despite their fear. Admiral Zeftar was genuinely confused by this response. In all his years of conquest, no species had ever spoken to him this way. Your resistance is illogical, he transmitted. You have no chance of survival. Why do you choose death over submission? Captain Park paused to consider the question seriously. Admiral, let me ask you something. In all your conquests, how many species have you met that chose to fight instead of surrender? None, Zeftar admitted. All intelligent species choose survival over pointless resistance. Then you have never met anyone quite like us, Park said. You see, we learned long ago that some things are worth dying for. Freedom is one of them. Honor is another, and protecting our families and our future, that is worth everything. Though communication line went silent for several long moments. Then Admiral Zeftar's voice returned, colder than space itself. Very well, human, you have chosen death. Begin the attack. The Council ships charged their weapons. Dr. Lee started the reactor overload sequence. The fusion core began building toward a massive explosion that would release more energy than a small star. Its containment field started fluctuating wildly as the power levels rose beyond all safety limits. 30 seconds to detonation, Lee called out through the observation windows. They could see energy building in the alien weapon arrays. The Council ships were preparing to turn Luna Base into radioactive dust in space. But instead of terror, the human crew felt something strange. They felt proud. 10 seconds, Lee announced. Park opened the general communication channel for the last time. All stations, this is the captain. It has been an honor serving with all of youth. Fusion reactor exploded in a flash of light, so bright it could be seen from Earth. The electromagnetic pulse raced across the lunar surface at the speed of light, hitting the Council ships. Like an invisible hammer, Admiral Zeftar watched his control panels go dark one by one as the energy wave overwhelmed his ship's systems. Most of his electronics failed at the same time, leaving his fleet blind and helpless, floating in space like expensive metal garbage. But something impossible was happening. Human ships were appearing from behind lunar mountains and crater rims where they had been hiding. Mining vessels, transport ships, and even a luxury cruise liner came out of concealment and began moving toward the disabled. Council Fleet Captain Oh Sung-jin commanded this ragtag collection of civilian ships that had been waiting on the far side of the moon, 23 vessels crewed by miners, cargo haulers, and even some tourists who had volunteered for what everyone knew was probably a suicide mission. "This is Captain O2. All human vessels," he broadcast. "Luna Base has given us our chance. Now we show these aliens what happens when they threaten human families." The mining ship Busan Thunder, commanded by veteran asteroid miner Han Kung-soo, was first to attack. Its industrial drilling lasers had never been designed for combat, but they cut through the disabled Council warship hull like a hot knife through butter. Alien armor had been built to stop military energy weapons, but offered no protection against crude, powerful mining equipment that operated on completely different principles. Direct hit on enemy Vessel 3, reported Communications Officer Yoon Myung from the transport ship New Seoul. Their Admiral Zefdar watched in growing horror as his sophisticated warships were destroyed by converted mining equipment. The tactical situation made no sense at all. These were not military vessels, they were barely armed civilian craft operated by people who dug rocks for a living. "How are they penetrating our defenses?" he demanded. "Sir," his weapons analyst replied, "their equipment does not follow any known military patterns. Our defensive systems were not programmed to stop mining lasers and industrial tools." Captain O closed his transport ship Unity Dream with the Council flagship. The cargo bays had been filled with mining explosives that engineer Park Dong-hyan had modified with proximity sensors. Admiral Zefdar O transmitted directly, "I want you to understand something. The people you killed on Luna Base were not soldiers, they were scientists. Dr. Lee So-young was working on medicine to help sick people. Captain Park Jin-woo had a wife and children waiting for him on Earth." "Fists. Is war human?" Zefdar replied. "Casualties are expected." "No," Uno said coldly. "This is not war. War means fighting someone who can fight back. What you did was murder. Now you learn what happens when you murder humans." The Unity Dream launched every explosive it carried, guided by cargo handling computers that had been reprogrammed for combat. The mining charges designed to break apart asteroids exploded against the Council flagship in devastating blasts. His ship began to break apart and lose air. Admiral Zefdar made a decision no Council commander had ever made before. It opened an emergency channel. "Human vessels. This is Admiral Zefdar. I request terms for surrender." The channel went quiet, then Captain O replied with genuine confusion. "I am sorry, Admiral. Could you repeat that? Our translator might—" The giant meeting hall was bigger than anything humans had ever seen before. It stretched so far that the walls disappeared into darkness, and thousands of strange creatures filled the floating seats that hung in the air like glowing bubbles. Ambassador Kong Dae-ho stood on a small platform in the center, feeling very small and very human. And creatures that seemed to be made of living metal. One group looked like giant insects with wings that made musical sounds when they moved. Adjusted his black suit and looked around nervously. He had been chosen to represent all of humanity in this first meeting with what they called the Intergalactic Council. 3 months ago, Earth had received their first message from space. It was not the friendly greeting that movies had always shown. Instead, it was more like a very official letter telling them to come to this meeting, or else. Human delegation, but looking around at all these powerful alien beings, he felt like a child with a toy sword. The weapons these creatures probably had could turn Earth into dust in seconds. Lee So-young was busy taking notes on her tablet. Her scientific mind was amazed by everything she saw. But she was also worried the message from the Council had not sounded friendly at all. Council Leader Vexdary. He looked like a giant crystal mountain that had learned to walk. Vibrative Vexdary raised what might have been an arm, and the thousands of aliens fell silent. The sound was so complete that Kong could hear his own heartbeat. "Your species has been discovered." Directly into Korean, inside their heads, "The Council has decided your fate. You will surrender all military forces to our control, or your entire species will be destroyed." The human delegation stood in shocked silence. Between species, instead, he was being told that Earth had 1 week to become slaves or die. Captain Park stepped forward with a confused look on his face. "Excuse me," he said politely, "but I think there might be some translation error. Did you just threaten to kill everyone on Earth?" A ripple of movement went through the alien crowd. Some creatures turned to look at others as if they could not believe what they had heard. No species had ever questioned a council ultimatum. Before Counselor Dekron leaned forward from his floating seat. He looked like a giant octopus made of black metal with too many tentacles that moved independently. "Foolish human," he said, with what sounded like annoyance, "do you not understand simple language? We offer you the choice. Between service and death, most intelligent species choose to live." Darlie looked up from her tablet and adjusted her glasses. "Our freedom, and become your property, and if we say no, you will try to murder all 8 billion. You, this choice." The three humans looked at each other, and then Captain Park did something that no alien in the room expected. He started laughing. It began as a small chuckle, but grew into the kind of deep belly laugh that humans make when they hear something truly ridiculous. "That is the funniest thing I have heard all week," Park said, wiping tears from his eyes. Quiet that the humans could hear the electrical humming of the alien technology, the concept of laughing at a council ultimatum was so foreign that many of the aliens did not even have words for it in there. "Language S. Vexteri," Crystal Body began, to glow brighter with what the humans would later learn was anger. "This is not humor, human. This is your final warning." Before Direction Ambassador Kang stepped forward and straightened his tie. "With all respect, Council Leader, I believe there has been a serious misunderstanding. We appreciate the invitation to meet with your organization, but we are not interested in the terms you have offered. Perhaps we could discuss something that works better for everyone." The chamber erupted into chaos. Thousands of aliens began making sounds that their translation devices could not handle. The idea of negotiating after receiving an ultimatum was completely impossible. To understand, Counselor, that crone tentacles writhed like angry snakes. "You dare refuse the mercy of the Council. Your primitive weapons cannot stand against our fleets. We have conquered 1,000 worlds." Lieutenant Kim Minho, who was barely 25 years old, raised his hand like a student asking a question in school. "Excuse me, sir, but are you saying you want to fight us?" Step on them. The human delegation became very quiet as they processed this statement. The friendly atmosphere they had hoped for was clearly not going to happen. These aliens saw humans as bugs to be squashed. Ambassador Kang nodded. Slowly, "I see well. In that case, I should inform you that humanity has never actually learned how to surrender properly. It is not really part of our cultural programming." Narli looked at her tablet again. "Actually, we do have the word surrender in our languages, but historically speaking, we have never been very good at it. Even when we are completely outnumbered, we tend to keep fighting until someone wins." Silence with a mental projection that felt like someone shouting inside their heads. "What do you mean? You never learned to surrender every—" "We have had some practice fights among ourselves over the years. We call them wars, and even involved this is impossible," Counselor Dekron declared. "No species can survive with such illogical behavior patterns. Natural selection would eliminate such traits and yet here we are," Ambassador Kang replied cheerfully. "Perhaps that should tell you something about how reliable your assumptions are." The human delegation was escorted out of the chamber by floating robot guards, leaving behind thousands of bewildered alien representatives who had never encountered anything like this before. As the massive doors closed, Captain Park turned to his team with a grinwell that went better than expected. He said, "The space station corridors back to their ship." Ambassador Kang could not help but wonder what would happen next. The Council clearly expected humanity to either surrender or die fighting a hopeless battle. What they did not understand was that humans had spent their entire history learning how to turn hopeless battles into something else entirely. The signing of what became known as the Terra Accords marked the first time in galactic history that the Intergalactic Council had negotiated a peace treaty with an unconquered species. The ceremony took place aboard the space station where the negotiations had occurred, with representatives from dozens of alien civilizations watching in amazement. Ambassador Kang Deho stood beside Council Leader Vexteri as they signed the historic agreement. The document established humanity as an independent species with full territorial rights, while creating a framework for technological and cultural exchange between Earth and the Council worlds. But the most significant clause was Article 7, which created what diplomats called the Human Consultation Protocol. Anytime the Council encountered a species that refused to surrender in the traditional manner, they would consult with human advisors to help develop non-violent solutions. As Vexteri signed the agreement, his crystalline form pulsed with relief. "Ambassador Kang, may I ask you something?" In your species' history, has any conflict ever ended with both sides simply agreeing to leave each other alone, Ambassador? Kong smiled. Council leader, that is how most of our conflicts end. Eventually we fight, until everyone gets tired of fighting, then we sit down and work out a way to coexist. And this works? The council leader asked Tuzuli. Kong replied, though I should warn you, we are probably going to be the most annoying allies you have ever had. We have a tendency to question everything and suggest improvements to systems that have worked perfectly well for thousands of years. Vexter reform flickered with what might have been amusement. Given your species' talent for creative chaos, Ambassador, I suspect the galaxy is about to become a much more interesting place. The first test of the new relationship came only 3 months later, when the Council encountered the Kefrian Empire, a militaristic species that had developed powerful energy shields and refused all demands for surrender. The Council fleet found itself unable to penetrate the enemy defenses. Using conventional weapons following the Terra Accords, Council leader Vexeri contacted Earth for advice. Transmission reached Admiral Song Taehyun, who was now serving as Earth's military liaison to the Council Admiral. Song, the Council leader, explained, "We face an enemy with defensive technology that renders our weapons ineffective. How would humans approach this problem?" Admiral Song studied the tactical data with interest. "Council leader, your weapons are designed to penetrate shields by overwhelming them with energy. Correct? That is the standard approach." Vexeri confirmed. "Then you are fighting the shields instead of ignoring them," Song replied. "Have you considered not using energy weapons at Elda?" The suggestion was so simple that it took the Council several minutes to process. Admiral Song was proposing that they abandon their most advanced military technology in favor of something more primitive. "We have kinetic projectile weapons," Vexeri said slowly, "but they are considered obsolete compared to energy systems." "Perfect, Song," replied. "Send the Kefrians a message. Tell them you want to discuss terms, but you need to demonstrate good faith by disabling your energy weapons. Then shoot them with Roxa." Council fleet followed this advice and discovered that the Kefrian shields, which were specifically designed to stop energy beams, offered no protection against simple metal projectiles fired at high velocity. The enemy found themselves defenseless against what they considered primitive weaponry. Within hours, the Kefrian Empire requested negotiations, leading to their peaceful integration into the Council. The victory had been achieved not through superior firepower. Of the success spread throughout the galaxy, and requests for human military consultation began arriving. From Council worlds facing various challenges, the humans found themselves in the unique position of being the galaxy's premier experts on impossible warfare. Dr. Kim Soo-jin established the Terran Institute for Creative Problem-Solving on Luna Base, which had been rebuilt as a monument to human stubbornness. The institute became a training center where alien military officers learned to think like humans, approaching tactical problems from unexpected angles. General Park Yanzuk was appointed as the first director of interspecies military education. Her job was to teach alien commanders that warfare was not about following established rules, but about solving problems using whatever resources were available. The most popular course was called Human-Style Logistics, taught by engineer Nam Ji-hoon, who had coordinated the asteroid belt defense. The class covered topics like weaponizing civilian infrastructure, converting industrial equipment for military use, and treating entire star systems as potential tactical resources. Captain Oh Seung-jin, who had led the civilian fleet against Admiral Zefdar, became an instructor in improvised command, teaching alien officers how to lead mixed forces of military and civilian units. The course emphasized flexibility, creativity, and the willingness to try tactics that made no theoretical sense, but the most requested course was Dr. Kim Soo-jin class on biological and environmental warfare, which covered using natural systems as weapons. Students learned about everything from engineered pathogens that caused harmless but debilitating symptoms to using planetary weather patterns as tactical weapons. Success of human military thinking led to broader cultural exchange programs. Alien scientists began studying human problem-solving methods, while human researchers gained access to advanced Council technology. The collaboration produced innovations that neither species could have achieved alone. Dr. Lee So-young, who had died defending Luna Base, was posthumously awarded the highest honors from both Earth and the Council. Her research on quantum physics was combined with alien technology to create new forms of faster-than-light. Communication Captain Park Jin-woo was remembered as the first human to prove that courage and creativity could overcome overwhelming odds. His sacrifice inspired a generation of human and alien military officers who learned that the most powerful weapon was often an unexpected idea. The Terra Accords also established cultural exchange programs that brought young humans to Council worlds and alien students to Earth. The results were often chaotic, but always educational, as both species learned to see problems from completely different perspectives. Ambassador Kang Dae-ho became the first human ambassador to the Galactic Council, where his tendency to question established procedures and suggest improvements made him both popular and frustrating. He established the Diplomatic Innovation Committee, which worked to modernize Council procedures that had remained unchanged for millennia. 5 years after first contact, the galaxy had become a very different place. The Council had learned that there were alternatives to conquest, while humanity had gained access to technologies and knowledge beyond their wildest dreams. But perhaps the most significant change was in how conflicts were resolved. Throughout the galaxy, species began adopting human-style negotiation techniques, focusing on creative problem-solving rather than force. The number of wars decreased dramatically as civilizations learned to see challenges as puzzles to be solved rather than enemies to be defeated. Council leader Vextheri, reflecting on these changes during a diplomatic dinner on Earth, made an observation that summarized the transformation. Ambassador Kang, he said to his human counterpart, "When we first met your species, we saw you as a problem to be eliminated. Now we realize you are actually the solution to problems we did not know we had." Ambassador Kang raised his glass in a toast. Council leader, you taught us that we are not alone in the universe. We taught you that being alone was not the only way to be strong. The toast was echoed throughout the dining hall by representatives from dozens of species who had learned that the most powerful force in the galaxy was not superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but the willingness to think differently and work together. As the evening continued, with humans and aliens sharing stories and ideas, Ambassador Kang looked around the room and smiled. The galaxy had indeed become a much more interesting place, and humanity had found its role not as conquerors or subjects, but as teachers of the impossible. The war that had begun with threats of annihilation had ended with a lesson that would reshape galactic civilization for generations to come. Sometimes the best way to win was to help everyone else learn how to think like humans, creative, stubborn, and absolutely unwilling to give up when faced with impossible odds.